Hello world and welcome to IR Talks, a podcast by students of international relations talking all things IR. Now on today's episode we will be talking about the theory of liberalism. The theory of liberalism when discussed in IR is used to explain how behaviors of and different institutions and economic connections contain and mitigate the actions of states in the international system. Now liberalism promotes liberal ideas such as peace, cooperation and human rights.
You said something about institutions and liberalism. So currently, do we have any institutions that is practicing liberalism?
Yes, we have the United Nations. So to go back, we'll start off with the League of Nations. So after World War One, there was the establishment of the League of Nations, which was in 1920. This international institution was based in Geneva, Switzerland, and it was first proposed by President Woodrow Wilson as part of his 14 points plan for peace in Europe, and it is through the Treaty of Versailles which became the League of Nations. So its main objective was to promote international cooperation and to achieve international peace and security. RAS 2023 stated that the League was not effective at preventing military aggression. The organization has no physical power of its own, and before long, member nations were simply defying the rules and expectations of the League, and so the organization ceased to operate in 1946. Now, moving on, the UN, which is the predecessor of the League of Nations, was established in 1945, following World War II, and with the same objectives and goals as the League of Nations, and it is headquartered in New York City.
Okay, so how does the formation of the League of Nations and the United Nations link to the idea of liberalism?
So, both the League of Nations and the United Nations were international institutions operating under the principles of the theory of liberalism to serve their functions and purposes, which that is to maintain international peace and security, to develop friendly relations among states, addressing economic, social, cultural, and humanitarian problems, and to promote human rights. So, according to Mingst and Arreguin-Toft 2017, liberalism is a general theoretical perspective mainly focuses on the idea of democracy to avoid conflicts and wars between states. Meaning, through the idea of democracy, the two international institutions were established to serve their functions and purposes to maintain peace and world order between states. So the main link between the theory of liberalism and the two stated intergovernmental organization lies within the shared common liberal values and principles, which is in relation to cooperation, diplomacy, human rights, democracy, and conflict resolution. So the two intergovernmental organizations mainly serve as a practical implementation of the many liberal principles, providing a platform for countries to work together towards global peace, security, and development. So that is how the theory of liberalism is linked or connected to the two intergovernmental organizations.
So is there like any other earlier forms of like liberalism?
Yes, there were two events in the past: the Treaty of Westphalia and the Hague Peace Conference. The oldest, the Treaty of Westphalia, was in 1644. It was held in Germany mainly to end the 80-year-long war between Spain, Dutch, and the German. The treaty was a success, which resulted in new territories being made, and they gave tolerance to the new churches that were made in Europe. The second one is the first Hague Peace Conference in 1899. It was held in the Netherlands with 26 nations being represented. The main purpose of the treaty was to limit armed forces and make laws to prevent future warfare. The conference was considered failed because the main agendas were not being met. However, there were other outcomes from the conference, like they created laws to prevent future warfare, and if they were to happen, there were other restrictions that were made for the tactics to be used. The most important outcome of this conference was the creating of the Permanent Court of Arbitration.
So what is the link between the theory of liberalism and the Treaty of Westphalia and the First Hague Peace Conference?
There is a link that links the two events, and it is a theory of liberal internationalism. So according to Rebecca David 2011, it states that international society is based on the idea of cooperation between states for common goal and interest. So liberal internationalism argues that in order for there to be peace in the international affairs, states must cooperate together. The Treaty of Westphalia established the principle of sovereign state sovereignty. This is an important principle because liberal internationalism believes that states should be free to cooperate with each other on their own terms. And the conference that resulted in the adoption of several conventions, and this convention established the development of international laws and arbitration. So liberal internationalists believe that international cooperation could be used to resolve dispute peacefully. So the two events reflect the idea that international cooperation is used to promote peace and stability. And that is the core principle of liberal internationalism.
So liberal internationalism promotes peace and cooperation from international states, yeah? So where do we see that in PNG? Do we see examples of that in PNG?
Yes, so a good question, Jonathan. The idea of liberalism is felt in PNG through the work of the United Nations leading agency, the United Development Program, or is commonly known as the UNDP. So PNG as a developing country, it faces various challenges and issues such as poverty, inequality, poor governance, tribal warfare, etc. So PNG as a member state to the UN extended its arms out and provided help in terms of funding and other resources through UNDP to curb or eliminate these issues in the country. For instance, currently the UNDP is promoting peace in Ella province by bringing together the tribal leaders and bridging peace among them. So promoting peace is one of the main aspects of the theory of liberalism, which the liberalism and the liberal institutions emphasize on peace, freedom, democracy, and international cooperation. Okay, back forward to the history of the liberalism, the League of Nations and the United Nations, the First of Peace Conference and the Treaty of Westphalia are all significant events in the history of liberalism, which all of these events represent the steps in the development of a more liberal world order, which they show that there is a growing commitment to the principle of individual rights, peace, democracy, and freedom, and international cooperation.
I think that brings us to the end of our podcast, and thank you guys for watching, and see you on in the next episode.